Awesome, guys. You've made it to episode 3 of the Chris Barr saga. So in episode 1, we learned who he is and his most perfect business. In episode 2, we talked about him diving into pool businesses and going through initial models, as well as some strategies on how to get new leads. In episode 3, we're going to do a deep dive into personal branding so that you look really good for the broker, as well as looking great for the buyer. Stick around and find out. Welcome back to Jacquisitions. We got Chris Barr on today for some awesome updates. Super excited to have you, Chris. I'm glad you're feeling better, man.
Yeah, it was a rocky start to the week there, but yeah, as I mentioned, man, just in time for Easter, we are up from the dead.
Ha ha ha, risen.
I have risen.
Sweet, man. So it's been a few weeks. We've given it some time since the last time we talked. What's going on in your world? What's the update? Did you end up talking to some private equity groups? How have you been doing?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. I know last time we spoke, we really kind of focused on some sourcing efforts and kind of how to get some originations cooking. So I did reach out to some micro PE firms. Again, I'm hunting in such a small geographic area that there wasn't a ton of pickings, but the one group I did talk to was super amicable, really warm relationship there. They're definitely hunting through their pile to see if they're passing anything small that might be good for me. Likewise, they want me to keep bigger opportunities in mind for potential partnership with them. If I find anything really appealing that I just feel like is a little bit above my purchase price range. So yeah, it was a fantastic suggestion. So
completely a win-win, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you find something, it's a win for you and a win for them, because in the long run, you remember their name and potentially sell it back to them. But if you find something too big, then they're looking at you to say, hey, we also need an operator in this. We're looking for a great operator. Nobody's going around and doing this. And so you're showing up when, no one else is. So that's a great job. I mean, I'm pumped. I'm glad that's working for you.
Just answer the phone is one of those phrases that's always easier said than done. I know it was hard for me in my business because the phone always rings while you're out in the field trying to get something done, or it's 8 p.m. and you're trying to get your kids to bed. Well, I have the solution for you. I'm extremely excited today to announce Quick Staffers, your go-to solution for building a high-performing, cost-effective customer service team. We are placing CSRs who have been pre-trained on proven home service SOPs and scripts, the same ones that Wilson and I use in our business. For a limited time, we're offering $500 off your initial placement costs for the first 10 signups. See link in the description below, or head over to quickstaffers.com for more information.
So you called around, talked to some private equity firms, just threw the idea out there. What else have you been up to?
One of the things we talked about was using some B2B cold calling mechanisms to try to help put me directly in touch with some small businesses in the area. I liked the idea on the surface. It sounded great, sounded like something I really wanted to engage. And you mentioned some performance-based, mechanisms where you pay on commission rather than upfront. Wasn't able to really find much in that regard. Most did have some upfront costs included. Best deal we could find was really more than we were willing to pay. We're running a pretty slim, small, search fund over here. So incurring some extra costs when especially it's really just taking legwork out of my end. Juice wasn't worth the squeeze. But I did engage some freelancers on Upwork to help create a big list of CPAs and bookkeepers in my area to reach out to for some off-market deals. They crushed that assignment, so that's been going well. Haven't gotten any deals from those CPAs yet, but using them also to create a similar list for pressure washers and painters where they can build the list out. I'll do the cold calling, which I think I'd actually prefer to do myself anyways. So
those are great points. I want to stop you there because I just had this really cool interview with a good buddy of mine his name's Elias. He's out in Denver, and I was asking him about this exact thing. I said, hey, why aren't because I met him he cold called me in my business. I said, why aren't you using this third party? He goes, Jack, it just doesn't work the same as if I call. I call 100, 200, 300 people. I get one yes or two yeses, but those yeses are worth so much more in the long term than the potential no from someone else calling. And nowadays with all the AI and the garbage we get, that same day I had 3 messages in my email inbox in that time that we recorded. They were like, hey, are you willing to sell your business? And it's the most regurgitated AI garbage. And so I think that there's a push or for people who are willing to push and do cold calling themselves, buy the list and just do it. So go so much farther. And especially you're a friendly guy, like it would work amazing.
Yeah.
So that's the first part is I think that's on the right track. The second part is you should add wealth managers to your search list. Not just, you have CPAs, you have all those guys. Wealth managers are a big win because they win when you win, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody has a business, most of their assets are tied up in that business itself, right? $1, $2, $3 million. They're working with a financial planner, a wealth manager, whatever you want to call them. And so when they sell, then that money moves to the wealth manager.
Yep.
And so it's this really good synergy where if you can work with wealth managers who kind of play in the field or dabble in the field and niche down a little bit, it's a win. It's not my personal strategy. I have only talked to 1 or 2 wealth managers, and they've offered me businesses a little bit out of my region, though. It was down in like Pulaski, so a little bit too far for us to drive, but great. It's still a good strategy is go to wealth management, see if you can get a hold of them, and go from there.
Yeah, I also, on top of CPAs and bookkeepers, I included estate attorneys, just because if somebody is retiring and looking at that next chapter, they're probably engaging in an estate attorney. Throwing them in the mix as well.
This is so important, and I'm so glad that you understand this. 1, because like I said, we're all working together on this, but 2, having to explain this to new buyers is a very difficult thing for me because they only want to go the broker route, broker, and I have to tell them, A, you're not going to get the best deal, but that's okay. Even that's not where my broker issues come into play. My broker issues come into play is that it's such a fragmented market that even in your small region, if you were to call, the top 50 brokers, you're not, and for your specific niche, you're not even going to have, maybe I'll zoom out a little bit. If you called the top 50 brokers in the US and said, hey, I want an HVAC deal, the top 50 brokers would probably own 10% of the market or 5% of the market. Like they wouldn't even have the vast majority of the HVAC market in lower middle market. It's just, it's so fragmented. There's so many people that are letting their buddies or their real estate agent, commercial real estate agent, no offense, but just this random guy sell their business for them. And it's so fragmented that you could talk to 1,000 brokers and you still wouldn't have most of the market covered. And so it's not a great lead source in the long run. It's a okay lead source, but there's better ones.
And cards on the table, to be totally transparent, that's probably the area where I've been weakest in the past couple, weeks since our last conversation. I'm just getting such broker burnout. I feel like I have my handful that I talk to, and that's great. And I still see, some good results and listings that are worth looking at coming in from them. But I feel like I reach out to brokers, give the same old spiel. Sometimes they follow up, sometimes they don't. Good ones, bad ones. I still get put on the same MLS lists and get access to the same exact deals. And so it's a great upfront push, and it's something that I do need to, tighten the screws a little bit of staying on top of. But I really feel like the momentum of finding higher quality deals and stuff that's really in the select niche that I'm looking at is just going to come from more off-market avenues. Again, the bookkeepers, direct calling, etc. So I'm really starting to see the value in that now that I'm in about month 4 of the search.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so update in terms of last time we talked, you were moving in a direction on a pool cleaning business. What is that currently look like? Did you end up going to LOI? Where are you at with that one?
I know that being decisive and getting something moving forward or off the pile is key. That being said, this one is really going to been put on the back burner, and I'm actually really comfortable with that. There's not a lot of competition on it, which really does not bode well for it. I do have hesitancies about how they're reporting income. And I know that it's common practice, but as we talked about last time, it does create some red flags. It's not as vintage as I'd like. It's only been around 5 years. I'm really ideally hunt for something around 10 years or older than that. So, it's there. No, so no one else is moving on it. I can if I want to. There's been some traction with other deals that have been a lot more appealing. So I've kind of diverted my attention there. So I'm kind of fine where that one's hanging out for right now. So that's kind of latest and grace on that front.
I mean, respectfully, I'm never one to tell someone that their deal is bad and they shouldn't do it, because I'm not the one who's doing it.
Yeah.
But the pool business you were looking at, based on the numbers, it's probably a good thing you're passing in the long run, just because it's a buyer's trap. Once again, that's why there's no additional eyes on it. So for everyone out there, I'm going to talk about it because I'm not under PG or NDA, and I'm not going to talk about it exactly because I don't want anybody to look it up and get Chris in trouble either. But essentially, it was a $1 million purchase price and almost a 280 in SDE. So realistically, it's running at a 4x multiple on a young pool business with, it probably doesn't. It's a lot of construction base, which in my mind takes it down, even though it's in the pool industry, so different industry, still project-based, construction-based, not reoccurring revenue, not service revenue. And so it makes it really hard, especially because it was 3 categories of business. So you're running 3 separate businesses in that. If it was one business in construction doing that, or one business as a route doing that, like, you have a really good singular business, right? That's what I say the same thing to people who do HVAC. If you have an HVAC company that you really like and it's selling, but it does $300,000 in service, it does $300,000 in commercial, and then does $300,000 in new construction, like, those are 3 separate $300,000 businesses. Like, that's a tiny, tiny business. Whereas it looks like $1 million business. It's not. It's 3 separate small businesses. And so, it's probably a good thing. I like that other deal, the other pool deal you brought. If you find something like that again, that was significantly better. It was singular route based. It wasn't as much in revenue side, but in the long term, right? Like I said, it had systems in place that would have allowed you to jump in and grow it.
Yeah, and and revenue wise, it wasn't too far off. Sorry, not revenue wise, but as far as SDE went, they ran a much tighter operation, much more aggressive multiple. I don't think I'm violating any NDA stuff because this was all told to me prior to even signing NDA. But it was owned by, some billionaire, and I have no idea who, which is why I'm calling it Scrooge McDuck's, pool service deal. And again, maybe that guy makes his money by selling off, $500,000 businesses and taking advantage of guys like me. And I don't know. I tend to not think so. That and anybody who's operating at that high of a level isn't cutting corners, and they're not cheating on their tax returns to try to save nickels and dimes. They're not classifying labor as 1099 when it should be W-2 to avoid a payroll tax. So a lot cleaner numbers. Again, it was singular in that it was a route, and then some as far as servicing, shock in the pool, and then some repairs as well. So it was a lot more streamlined. It was a much more appealing deal. We do have finger on the trigger with LOI. I'm planning on sending it after this call. I just wanted to see if any notes or any helpful tips on LOIs came up from this call before actually sending it. But we're actually offering, a little bit over purchase price because they are a contract right now.
On which one? The second pool business? One. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
No.
Deal. So
I like that deal.
Yeah.
For others listening, it was significantly less in terms of purchase price. It was the same SDE, and the revenue was less, but as expected. It's one of those smaller businesses that it is a job to some extent. He's going to go in and have to operate it and have to hire pool guys and learn pool chem and do the whole thing. But I love pool routes. I think they're super scalable and you can get really, really efficient. And then with a little bit of branding, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity for the disruption there.
Yeah, and that was kind of why this guy created this pool route, was to really corner the market, and you just kind of never got around to doing it. But as far as scaling goes, I see these. It was one of the when I first started looking. It was one of the types of businesses I saw get listed all the time. A pool route here, a pool route there. So once you operate it and you've got your arms around it, and you've been doing it to pull out a bit more capital, buy another 200 pools on a route, and just grow that way through acquisition. Seemed like a pretty solid model for scaling.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, the obvious downside, right, is the reason that there's so many small pool routes is because Chuck and Truck can go and take their, 1996, I don't even know if this is the right model and make, but they could take an S10 Chevy, an old S10 Chevy, throw some stuff in the back, some chemical, chlorine, with some basic knowledge of how to clean pools, and you can run a nice little route, go knock on doors. There are tricks and tips like, hey, you got to partner with moving companies to suggest on the move in, hey, you're moving in this house, I see you have a pool, this is this guy's card. I would give him a call. He's an amazing pool guy. And so there's a lot of different tricks that are outside of the box on those ones, because at the end of the day, it's a very competitive market. There's lots of small fragmentation, but that can also offer opportunity when buying more of them, right? You can buy a $30,000, $40,000 pool route, and just keep growing like that.
Yep. Especially once you've got the branding figured out, it makes scaling pretty easy.
Yeah, I think like a very similar one that I've really liked recently is the pest control. They've been doing very similar, small trucks, lots of branding, knocking on doors, door to door. My wife just fell for it, so we now have a different pest control agent, because she was telling me there's some young kid came knocking on the door and gave me this thing, and I said, oh my gosh, you fell for it. You fell for it.
We thought about it for a bit, and I don't know if it's like in my real estate acquisition background coming to haunt me, but I just think of like phase ones and environmentals and stuff like that. And I think of pest control and liability for chemicals, toxins, stuff like that. And that kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies. But again, I know people who it's worked great for, so definitely not knocking it. But yeah, like some of the other verticals we're currently looking into.
Sweet. So you're going to offer LOI as a backup position a little bit higher than the current position, just in the hopes that if something goes wrong, they back out, that they come to you.
Yep. And we're again trying to put in a pretty competitive offer to, if anything goes wrong with their current deal, they know that they've got a great one, right there to backfill it. And to make it extra competitive, we were going to try to advertise a super, super short due diligence period. I was talking to my pops, 7 days, and I'm like, a little bit too aggressive, and especially with tariffs right now, and all of what might be coming down the pipeline and how that can impact things. Definitely did not want to shorten DD up that tight, so gave him a standard kind of 45. Usually I would maybe try and negotiate for 60, but 45. And the thing is, we are taking a run at this one because we're assuming that it's going to be very, very streamlined, very, very simple numbers. And so we have a lower tolerance for red flags on this deal, because we're kind of taking a run at it with the expectation of clean and simple numbers. So,
and are you working? Where did you get your LOI template from? Are you working with a group? Did you buy it? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and this is, it's kind of nice to go through a trial run. Our broker that we're working with, he's actually been really, really solid to work with so far. And he said, I really uniquely craft these LOIs, per the deal. I don't really go off a template. They're all pretty individualized. And there's a lot more narrative in the LOI than I'm used to seeing. It's pretty black and white with a lot of the real estate transactions I've seen in the past. So, descriptors that would seem out of place to me. But again, this is my first LOI round in a small business acquisition transaction so far. So again, I don't have much of a base comparison other than my real estate background.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely, it's fairly, I guess, irrelevant, because as long as you have the back out clause and you have some of the key clauses, it doesn't create too much of a headache, because they aren't as stringent as real estate transactions. But I was going to say, I think you might have a leg up on a lot of people going into this situation, because what we see a lot of times, like I was joking earlier, is a lot of times the broker ends up being a commercial real estate person that has moved out of commercial real estate, and then they come into these transactions and they act like it's commercial real estate, and then they have a bunch of buyers that go, no, we're not putting down anything into escrow. We're not going to, front money. Although, right, talk about a way to really prove that you're a real buyer and that you're really into this is putting some money up. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd be very careful in what kind of escrow, third-party escrow account and all that kind of stuff. But like that is a great way to push yourself to the head of the pack if you are dealing with an ex-real estate, commercial real estate broker who is now brokering deals. But I mean, the deal generally, like the deal templates aren't too different in the sense that there is still a due diligence period. You're stating the terms and what you're expecting to buy on, that this is not binding, but this is, hey, we aren't going to, if you have to retrade, you have to retrade it. The binding parts are like, hey, you're not going to shop this deal around while I'm under contract with you. You're going to provide all documentation that we need to go through due diligence. But I would be careful getting it's probably fine, but I definitely feel icky about you taking in a LOI from that broker, because they're not on your team, right? Their goal is to sell the business. Their goal is not to help out.
Oh, it's my broker, not the seller.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My specific buyer broker. So he is on my side of the fence. Yeah. No, I would not be using it.
I was treading lightly there.
But... No, I appreciate it. Yeah. Very kind of you. But no, I would slap me for that one if I was in your shoes. So, it's my broker. And again, while I'm not used to some of the nuances that come along with these transactions, there is a lot of parallels. Obviously, tying it up and taking off the market, key, non-binding, and having an escape hatch, key. All the basics are there. But one thing you mentioned was retrades, and I think that's the biggest difference maker between these LOIs and what I've done in commercial real estate. Because retrade is like a 4-letter word. Like nobody ever wants to retrade anything. It's very, very icky. These are much more loosey-goosey. It's more of a framework for how to move the conversation forward than it is a negotiated deal that you're just doing, your checks and inspections and scrutinizations on. This is everything's kind of loosey-goosey and is pretty contingent on everything else. So I'm like, what the hell are we even agreeing to here if everything's contingent on everything? But it really does work to my favor as a buyer. I can set up an LOI as a multiple and then allow my own calculations of their SDE to speak for themselves. We can have an argument about what their SDE is, but I've agreed that it's going to be based on some kind of multiple. So that flexibility is new to me, but I see that there's a lot of advantages to myself as a buyer with that flexibility.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that all makes sense. I'm going through currently my last LOI I sent out, and I mean, really, it's a lot of it's just dictating who's going to be doing what, and that there's going to be a non-compete, that you agree that 60-day due diligence period. Everybody's party's going to bear responsibility for their own expenses, like very basic stuff. I guess the craziest part that I have is my creative financing all goes in there, how I'm going to buy the deal, that you're going to buy it on 7A or cash, or sellers know what that's going to look like at what percentages. So pretty standard stuff. I would highly recommend, I mean, you're working with your broker. Once again, you only need to get one or two of them to really understand what they look like. And then from there, it's rehashing old LOIs makes sense. But for everyone listening, if you don't have a professional one from a broker and or a law group, go get a basic one. Pay the $300-400. It's worth it, just to make sure you're covered. But yeah, that's neat. So you're going to put a secondary position LOI on that. And then have you been looking at anything else?
Yeah, so we've talked about that art framing business for a while now.
Not home service, but I love it.
I know. Again, still service related, and especially here in West Palm Beach, where you have Palm Beach Island right across the way, and it's billionaires row over there,
Hmm.
and people get very, very high end artwork framed all the time. Um, it seems like a pretty on brand business for this market in the service sector, and again, service is really where I'm putting the premium at. And it's interesting, she wasn't wanting to entertain me as a buyer. Not, tried not to get offended,
Wait,
but
so how did you get in touch though originally? Where did that start at?
it's actually how I ended up, using the same broker that I'm working on that LOI with now. I was talking with a different broker. He was kind of my number one guy, and he was a super nice dude. But I saw this art framing business. I'm like, I'd love some more information. And he just like couldn't get me couldn't get me a CIM. We fill out the NDA, but I'm like, it was weeks. I'm like, yo, like, can I ever get a look at this thing? He's like, oh, the broker won't get back to me. And then
Hmm.
I, struck up a relationship with this other broker. He's like, yeah, I just showed that one a couple of weeks ago. Let me put you in touch. So he was able to send it right over. I was interested. He said, the seller has been extremely particular on the buyer that they're choosing. Does not, wants to have someone that has prior framing experience, ideally, which I don't know where the hell
Ooh,
you're going to find that,
yeah.
but was not wanting someone that resembled a PE firm, didn't want someone who's going to view this as a transaction, someone who's truly going to be an operator. I'm like, I'm your guy. And, as far as that skills gap go, that's where I really saw an opportunity because I'm like, her and I are on the exact same page. Again, I'm looking at painting, pressure washing, opposed to
Hmm.
things like HVAC, which is your world, because I plan on being a true blue operator. And there's a technical skills gap with, HVAC, plumbing, something like that. Um, Framing, I do feel confident that I can learn. It does. I mean, I respect that it's a trade. There's some complexities there, nuance. I get it, but I can learn that. And she needs someone who's willing to learn and that she can teach this craft to, because the odds of her finding a ready to go framing
So
spec
small.
is so small.
So
So
small.
we're in the same boat here. So let's listen to reason. So she didn't want to entertain me as a buyer. She said, "You have no framing experience." I tried to milk what little I could. I was like, I
Yeah.
was a surveillance guy in the Marine Corps. I took tons of pictures. That's my art
And she's like,
experience.
no, no, not at
Yeah.
all.
So finally got her back to the table, and it seems to be moving in the right
Well, so
direction.
how'd you get her back to the table? I think this is important. What'd you
So
do?
kind of got creative and said, all right, like what would inspire her? And I said, listen, if we have a negotiated deal on the table, I'm willing to work under you, an apprentice, for 6 months free of charge to you. I'll continue to get paid out of the same, fund I'm getting paid out of right now. Um, and for 6 months, I will learn directly under you, learn everything I can possibly learn about the, framing business. I'll be flexible if to keep you on as a consultant. If you want to
Yeah.
be hands off, that's fine. But if I can pay you for additional consulting work down the road, um, happy to do that. She's going to continue to own the real estate, which she owns now. So
That
I
makes
said,
sense why she's so picky about her buyers, because she's going to try to do a lease back, and she wants
yeah,
that person to understand that they need to stay in that location to make it work in the long term. Same with PE.
yeah.
She doesn't want them shutting down shop and then her having to worry about, hey, where am I going to get a new tenant from?
Mhm. And
So
it's twofold because it's her, she said
yeah,
it's partially that she's like, A, I wouldn't want, my tenant to go dark on me. B, that also means that like my baby went away. So it's a really
yeah,
kind of twofold reasoning for her. So I,
keeps it
definitely put up,
close.
I said we can show a balance sheet that more than guarantees a 5-year lease in its entirety. So it was really the combo of those two things that, brought her back to the
I
table.
mean, it makes sense because you literally put blood, sweat, and tears into these companies for years and years and years. So you want to know that it goes to someone who's going to take care of it. I mean, I think it's a little short-sighted that she was worried about that, but to each their own. And so wait, how did you, when you were getting back to her to try, and she's told you no, the broker told you no, I'm sure you were going through brokers. They kept
Mhm.
saying, no, we're not going to, she doesn't want to do this deal with you. What did you do? Did you send like a direct letter? Did you just send a really nice email? Did you call her? Like, what was the medium in which you got in touch?
Medium was honestly broker to broker. I really didn't have to get that crafty with the medium at all. It was really just the terms and the willingness, I think, to again do that 6 months apprenticeship free of charge to her. But I just called my broker. I'm like, hey, go holler at her broker. Let him know I'm willing to do this. See if she can come back to the table. And he said, okay, listen, she's willing to talk to you. We set up a call. She was not on the first call. It was just her broker. So I spoke to her broker personally. He heard it from, the horse's mouth. Then he relayed that to her. And then we all hopped on a Zoom and, everything went forward from there.
And that went well after talking to her. She wants to continue forward.
Oh yeah, we're doing an in-person tour. I'm getting boots on the ground. So yeah, excited.
That's cool. I gotta learn more about framing businesses. Then now I'm gonna go out there and see it. I've heard about it through the grapevine, like really good businesses, high-end art. Like you said, you're in a very affluent area, so it works really well. So interesting.
And it doesn't have a huge bandwidth for scaling. There's definitely a limited ceiling there, but they've been doing zero marketing for a while now. I mean, it's been around since '88. They've been mostly word of mouth. And I remember we did talk about it's good to have some systems in there, but like social, it's like catnip for Instagram. I mean, it's very, very marketable on social media. And I feel like there's a lot of cool campaigns that you can do with art framing, before and afters, stuff like that.
That's true. That's a very good point. That I'd much rather see that business have the systems in place where you just have to turn the knob and it raises. But that being said, it is a very, somebody fixing an HVAC system or I guess pulling a toilet, not overly artistic in the sense of like videography, but putting together the art frame and cutting and slicing and putting the backing on and gluing it. And I think with gorgeous art pieces, by the way, inside that frame that you're utilizing. So you get a little bit of that stolen, the stolen ethos there from the art itself. That'll be really interesting. I'm going to be interested to see what the numbers in the business are, because that's going to be interesting in general. I've never looked at an art framing business before per se.
If your books say you're making a lot of money, but there's nothing in the checking account, let's talk about CFO Made Easy. Most home service businesses hit a point where the money's coming in, but it's still unclear where it's all going. You've got a bookkeeper logging the past and a CPA filing your taxes, but no one helping you plan the future. And that's where CFO Made Easy comes in. They provide part-time CFO services specifically for trades and home service businesses. HVAC, plumbing, electrical, roofing, you name it. They help you improve cash flow, maximize profit per tech, and make growth decisions with confidence. If you're tired of winging it financially and you want to see that bank balance grow, schedule a free financial insight session at cfomadeeasy.com or click the link below. We'll uncover what's holding you back and lay out a path forward. No fluff, no corporate finance speak. cfomadeeasy.com. It's time to grow with clarity.
Yeah, the margins are still really pretty good, and she treats her labor extremely well. They're full-time and they have benefits packages, and they go 50-50 on, insurance, stuff like that. So the fact that she's spending so much on labor, but the margins still look great on it, is pretty dang encouraging.
And what does she do in the business?
She's pretty involved. She does a lot of customer interaction. She says people feel special when they get to talk to the owner and they get to talk to the boss. And especially when you're dealing with high net worth individuals like would be, they do like to have FaceTime with the owner. But I'm a relationship person.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah, that I do not mind that at all. Yeah. She will, put hands on and actually do some frame construction, not a ton. But a lot of oversight, a lot of pricing, things like that. She does do her own books, but there is enough of a buffer in SDE where I can hire a bookkeeper, and that's not a massive line item. So
that's you can go overseas or even local, and you'll be fine with that. And so here's my question is, great lifestyle business, it sounds like, right? She works in the business. She's ready to retire, which is what I'm guessing she's getting out for. You get to meet cool people. You get to do cool things, but very low scalability other than raising prices because you are seen as a premium product. because your social media presence shows you as a premium product. More so, I mean, I'm thinking like tattoo artists, for example. A tattoo artist is a wonderful person, but they only get more money based on how great their art is and how well they're able to showcase and market that to then be able to charge more. And so somewhat similar, I would imagine, in this industry is, putting a piece of art in a frame is definitely important, and it costs a certain amount, but it's really like the labor and then I guess the cost of the frame, but there's no scalability in the long run, especially if it's a locale to geography. So what do you think about, what are you thinking in those terms?
That's valid. And again, the fact that they haven't done a lot of marketing, I mean, growth and scalability are two different things. But again, there is room to, I think, grow the revenue here on some level. But I'm 100% with you. There is a ceiling that, I will be hitting. And I would love to get your thoughts on this, because not that scaling, not that growth is not something that every potential entrepreneur should not be thinking about. It is, but at the end of the day, it's not something that's been the highest priority to me. Something that is steady, something that is stable, something that is going to make an income level where I'm able to feed my family and not be overly stressed about income. If it does that, do I need to grow it? I'm a simple man with simple needs, and maybe I'm being naive here, or maybe I'm self-aware. I don't know. You tell me. But if it hits my income needs and is pretty steady Eddie, I don't need to be Billy Big Shit and grow this thing to an empire.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question when searching for a business. There are some wonderful lifestyle businesses out there that have no potential for growth whatsoever. I don't think that this is necessarily one of those, but there's definitely businesses out there that are like that. And people live really, really happy, good lifestyles on them. Specifically, like I think I talked a few weeks back about lumber broker. And this lumber broker, he had his few contracts and he had his, few people he worked with, and he went to work at 10 p.m., went to the gym at 1, and then went home at 3. Like, the guy worked almost no hours and then answered a few phone calls, made $700,000 a year personally out of the $1 million a year that the company generated, because it was just him and an assistant. So, with those kind of businesses, it really depends on who you are and what you're looking for. Because even internally, like between John Wilson and I, John wants to grow $100 million business. I don't. I have zero want to make a $100 million empire. I'm more of that. I always say I'm the first class friend who flies first class to go visit you. He's the private jet friend that he wants the private jet to go visit you. I'm like, I just want to go in first class. I'll even economy I'll accept, as long as I can get a window seat. So that's what I'm looking for, and I think that that's important to understand about yourself really early on, because you can find a great business like this one. I think there's probably scaling options here. I don't think it's $100 million opportunity outside of maybe some kind of strange franchising. But
yeah, and not to get, super philosophical on your show or anything like that, but I mean, if you look at life satisfaction, it's the delta between what you have and what you want. And, wanting more is kind of in my mind, you're never going to win that game. There's always room to want more, and trying to keep that, what you have, up to speed with what you want feels kind of like a losing game at the end of the day. My whole approach is want less. And not to say that I'm settling, or not say that I'm setting my sights too low. But again, having the private jet, having one of the yachts out in Palm Beach Harbor, like, I don't need that. That's not where my happiness is.
Yeah.
Being able to sneak in the sneaky surf session at 7 a.m. is really more of a premium.
I was just going to say, most of us owners, I think, in the beginning, what you're looking for is some of your time back. And when I say that, people go, oh, time back, like I'm going to work less. The answer is no. You're going to work more. You're going to work 7 days a week, all day, every day. But you get to choose when you get your little time off. And so for me, it's like every morning I make my kids breakfast, and then I'm home for dinner. So it's like those 2 windows. I'm working after they go to sleep, and I'm working usually before they wake up. But those 2 windows is like, I don't have to go in the office till 10. I can do this podcast at 2:42 in the afternoon and not worry about it. But that's where the wins are, I think. And you hit the nail on the head. But that being said, sounds like a good business. I'm excited to hear more. I'm excited to see some more too.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here and try to find the opportunity in art framing in general and see where it can go from there. So.
Yeah. No, again, I'm excited. I'm still fairly fresh in it. We just really had our first, hunky dory meeting where we're all kind of on the same page and want to move forward. I'm going to put boots on the ground. So excited to report back, let you know what I've learned. I got to do plenty of my own research on this sector as well, because it was definitely one that I did not see.
That's like one of the ones you don't expect. And then 3-4 years down the road, you're like, oh, I guess I do this now.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. Yeah, the universe has a way. And I remember it was similar with the, it was the Arboretum it was a greenhouse or not landscaping, but they did, there was a nursery. That was it at a Greenville. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Same thing. I don't think he was really planning on owning a nursery, but again, the universe just has a way of putting something in your lap. So excited.
That's the fun part though, right? It's at the end of the day, it's a choose your own journey style book here, and you get to choose whatever you want. And if that's art framing, you're going to learn art framing, and you're going to be the best dang art framer there is. And then in a few years, you're going to like it or you won't. You move on. So cool stuff. Do you have any questions that came up that you're like, hey, I needed to ask Jack that? What should I have done here, or anything? Rings a bell?
I ended up bringing it up. It wasn't on my initial notes, but that broker burnout, again, kind of feeling like, the new brokers I talk to, I just get put on the same MLS lists. I feel like I look at my broker, database. I'm like, I should plug through some of these, but I'm like, what's the point? Again, I'm just, they're going to nod, they're going to smile. Maybe they send a follow-up email. Maybe they don't. At the end of the day, I'm just going to get put in front of all the same deals I've been seeing anyway. So is it really worth the opportunity cost there? Yeah, probably, because that's what they do. And being a name in mind for more brokers in the area can only be a good thing. But just want to know if you had any thoughts on how to handle the broker burnout.
Yeah, so I think a big portion of broker burnout, and I don't know how you think about this, or if you ever think about this, because I didn't. I kind of fell into it naturally, but my online presence is HVAC Jack, right? It's the HVAC Jack, Jacquisitions, HVAC guy. I'm always wearing HVAC. And so when I'm online talking about my wins and creating this version of myself online, I make sure that all my wins are forefront on my social media accounts. But I think that's important. I think that branding yourself in some way, sense, or form actually starts to help the broker process, because I'm thinking, right, let's pretend that we're brokers for a second. You get hundreds of calls. Half of them are time wasters. They don't know that Chris is not a time waster. They don't know he's not a tire kicker. And you say, hey, like, I'm looking for this size business. I'm looking for pressure washing and painting. Let me know. And then that in one ear out the other. But if you were to be, and I'm just super being hypothetical here, but if you were to be Chris the painter, paint acquirer or something, online, and that was your presence, and then they Google you, they say, okay, who's this Chris guy who does painting? And they Google you, and then boom, it's like, there's your LinkedIn, Chris the paint guy, the hits on Instagram, Chris the paint guy, Twitter's Chris the paint guy. And then all of a sudden, right, you've built this, I'm the paint guy, I'm going to buy a paint business here. And now they're like, they feel a lot more, there's a lot more trust in that interaction, I think, than their general interactions. There's a lot more trust, but also it's a memorable interaction for them. So my suggestion in this kind of broker burnout is, I think that a lot of times we're focused, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of bad brokers. There's some good brokers. I introduced you to one, but there's a lot of bad brokers that don't know what they're doing. They're doing this because they saw something a long time ago, like, oh, I could do that, and then they just deals sit, and poor owners sit with deals that aren't selling. But on the other side, like, I think it's our job as buyers to help drive the story. And that's, if you're leaving with anything today, it's like, drive the story of who you are and what you're looking for, because the more you and the better you're able to do that, the more memorable and easy it is for a broker to sell you something, right? So a lot of times the other side to this is the exact opposite is going, hey, I want to buy a $1 million business or purchase price of 1.2 million. And I was guilty of this. Purchase price 1.2, home service, and SDE above 200. Like, that's not, there's no memorable
Who
thing.
are you? Yeah.
Who are you? Like, yeah, I get that. But if you do a personalized story about how, you're in the military and your surveillance made you this perfect person to buy an art business or art framing business, and that, this just extremely personalized about who you are and why you're a great operator and why you're going to succeed, and how you have the funds and how you have the backing with real estate, boom, like, perfect. You can close, they're happy with you, they know that. And so that's my takeaway with broker burnout, is we get caught up sometimes in how bad they are versus focusing on what can we control. And it's like, I can control making my story better and my outreach better with personalization. And then that's how you win.
Yeah, honestly, I did not see the solution to that being branding. That's really not where my head was going to take me. But I love where your head's at. And, funny, quick story to close this out. In regards to that branding, one of the things that the art framing owner did not, one of the reasons they didn't want to entertain me is their broker took a look at my website, and I really tried to like craft my bio to be very, very personal. Like, again, small town guy, small business identity.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
And they took a look at it and they're like, oh, this looks like a mini PE shop. And I'm like, I'm flattered that we aired on the side of professionalism. I'm flattered that you think we're that legit, but like, no, we're local yokels here, man. Like, wait, so realizing that I did not brand as accurately as I initially thought I did was a little bit of a wake-up call. So I think it's probably time for me to revisit that a bit. But yeah, I really didn't. I always kind of thought the website was something that like no one would go to. Like, I'm going to do it just to say that I have it. But I'm starting to get the sense that, branding myself as a buyer is more important than I initially thought.
I had this conversation at SM Bash with quite a few people who are in the space. By the way, shout out SM Bash, super fun, good people. We had a great time talking about acquisitions and going through a lot of this stuff. And we had this exact conversation was about, I did it too, to try and drive ethos in the space. We build this website that is, I think yours is KC Acquisitions, mine was Something Ventures, and we're trying to actually emulate these PE firms and these venture capital firms and like their websites so that we can grab some of that ethos. But actually the opposite is true, is most of the buyers don't want private equity, or they don't want Peter Lohman had a great statistic from Axios. Axios is a platform where you can look at deals, kind of like BizBuySell, but a little better, more curated. And he said he scraped all the data, and the number one thing that stuck out was a personalized message. And then kind of along those same lines, not all owners want private equity. Not all of them want industry tuck-ins. Not all of them want this. That more often than not, it actually led that they wanted a good operator who cared about the business and who sent them a personal note to say, hey, I want to buy and continue legacy, which is wild to me because I thought the opposite.
Well, and it's weird because that's like really what I tried to create the branding to, convey the message of, is like, hey, I am not private equity. I am just I'm a guy. I'm an operator. I'm going to care about your business. Again, we come from a small business background. We're a family shop. Like it was kind of branded, or I thought it was branded to be very, very personal. But I don't know what I got to do. Put on a pair of overalls and have a big piece of wheat coming out of my mouth, or be more small town.
We'll break it down next episode. We'll go through your website so everyone on YouTube can see it and go, "Oh, Chris is the worst website." Shred you.
Just absolutely roast me up. I'm totally good with it.
Sweet.
So awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jack. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank everybody for listening. Leave us 5 stars wherever you listen. Head on over to ownedandoperated.com to get some more Jacquisitions, Owned and Operated, the workshops, Owned and Operated Pro, all of our wonderful things that we offer over there. And leave us 5 stars so we can keep doing this. And thank you all.